1176. Yeah, we'll let him introduce it.
Mr. Chairman, again, for the record, Representative Craig Hedlund, District 29. And the funding piece for House Bill 1176 is it's section 25 and 26. What the tax committee did was we did change the revenue source around a little bit from the way the bill was originally introduced. We took 225 million that was in the tax relief fund of legacy earnings, transferred that also to the property tax relief fund that was going to include the additional 173 million at the end of the earnings that flowed into SIF. We created a property tax relief fund there to the tune of about $383 million, I think it was, and $398 million, excuse me. So the total appropriation for the PRC at $1,450, I think, comes in at a cost of $473 million. 74 million of that is from the general fund, and 398 million roughly comes from the property tax relief fund. There's also 74 million to fund the homestead tax credit. I think the past bienniums had appropriated 70 million, so I believe it's an addition of 4 million, but that reflects that 74 million total cost of homestead, in the fiscal note.
Questions by the committee? Representative Navy.
Mr. Chairman, I just want the committee to know I handed out a sheet here on it's a memo on House Bill 1176. It shows all the gives you kind of a easy understanding of the bill with all the changes that finance and tax did. So this is the current bill before us, before any amendments. So I handed this out to committee. I used something similar when I introduced this to finance and tax back in January. So it just helps you understand the bill a little bit better.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Kempenick.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Hedlund. So the 225 is just getting rolled up into this conversation too then? Because that was basically the social service component of what we took over a few years ago, right?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Representative Kempenick, I think the 225 tax relief fund was just deposited into the general fund. So if we're going to create a funding mechanism for property tax in the future, and we're going to use legacy earnings to do it, it just made sense of us to transfer that earnings right into the property tax relief fund rather than having to make the transfer from the general fund or have the appropriation come out of the general fund.
Committee, that 250 million for social services, that's in the oil tax distribution lineup buckets. This 225 was in the legacy streams buckets, which was labeled just tax relief. So it really went into the general fund to help with income tax relief or any other tax relief that we provided. So this just identifies that 225 as being dedicated to the property tax relief. So that's in the legacy streams. Any further questions for Chairman Hedlund? Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Hedlund, with regards to growth, economic growth, so the city has a lot of industry come in, increase the tax base. That's not included in the 3%. This is only 3% for raising it, the budget that's provided for by mills. Is that correct?
That is, Mr. Chairman, Representative Murphy, that is not exactly correct either. What the levy limitation in this bill is it says you can only take 3% more in property tax revenue that you generated from the property in the past year. But then it has all these exceptions like for new property. So new property growth would be added to that. So the cap would not apply to that property until after it's on the tax rolls for the tax year. Then the cap will apply the next year.
So.
Continue.
So, so my assumption is more or less correct that
Yes.
if you had a lot of industry come in, build some big plants, you would add that to your base, mill base, but that addition would not count for a 3% towards that 3% increase.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct for that first year, but the following year, then your new base, it would be applied to.
Correct.
And Mr. Chairman, it's going to work the same way if you lose property value on your tax base. If there's a property that comes off the rolls, you're going to have to take that out. So you won't be able to keep that. So your cap will apply to that lower amount, which makes it kind of tough on. So.
Further questions for the chairman, Representative Steeman?
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Chair Hedlund. I believe we had a 10-year election opportunity in here to override. Can you explain that? Is that still remaining at that number?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Representative Steeman, that's the way it's written in the bill today. It's a 10-year opt-out provision.
Okay.
And again, the explanation for that is simply because all political subdivisions are different.
Right.
And to apply a cap to a political sub like a county that has a decreasing taxable value, the hard cap, the reality is they're going to end up with less money. As the tax value declines, it's less money every time. So because they're at their hard cap of 60 mills, and 60 mills, there is no 3% on top of 60 mills.
Okay. And I can do.
Continue.
And then the 50+1 is the vote that requires, or is it supermajority?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Steeman, it's 50+1 on a primary or general
Okay.
election. I think there was a provision, and it was taken to 60%, but the original bill came with a provision to allow a vote on a special election. I think the tax committee, we changed that provision to a 60% vote rather than just taking it out, which would have been an option too. And it's a direction that seems like a lot of the different votes on excess levy authority or bonding or anything, we want voter participation. So special elections are almost becoming taboo.
Representative Nathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Hedlund, two things in regards to following up on Representative Stevens' question for the opt-out phase. Why 10 years? And then why did we go from 1550 to 1450?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Representative Nathy, I think we went from 1550 to 1450 because we were trying to keep it in a range of appropriation that had been talked about, and it was amended to reflect more of what had been talked about. The 10-year provision was a policy decision that we made based on what other excess levy authority terms are in Century Code today. So if you're a county and you vote for 10 mills extra on road funding, when you have that vote, and if the vote is successful, it applied for 10 years before you had to re-vote. It was just modeled after that.
Further questions? Representative Pyle?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question on the 3% cap. I know we have a lot of like 150,000 new home builds. So when does that cap go on? Because they usually can get it for like 2 years, and that's decided upon at the local level. So does that 3% cap then overall come on the third year? Any idea how the logistics work on that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pyle, in a city where you have housing incentives that either delay a partial piece of, or a percentage of what your tax liability would be, that would still apply. We did not address that, but the 3% would apply on top of that. So you are going to, Mr. Chairman, at least I believe that it would work in a way that you have the property tax relief, whatever that may be, because it differs from one city to the next. That would apply, but your 3% cap would apply on top of that. So yeah, I guess, yeah, when you're exempting that property, it probably doesn't fall under a 3% cap until it comes on the tax rolls fully. You get to add that new property tax piece to it, or the new value. Guys ask a lot of policy questions.
We do. Representative Richter, do you have a question? It looks like you're waiting to ask.
Thank you,
one.
Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if it's a question for Chair Headland or if it's a question for Adam. But I'll just throw it out there. Since schools are already capped at mills 60, of course, there's the 2 that they can vote on, but building fund is already capped at 10 unless they both go to 20. So because the school districts already have a mill cap, then if valuations go up, the mills generate more dollars. If they go down, the mills generate less dollars. So there's less need for that.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Richter, school districts are going to fall under the same cap applied as it is to other political subdivisions. So if their base year says they get this much in tax revenue off of all the property that is there, they can take up to 3% more property tax revenue, and that's it. So school districts used to be able to go up to, I believe, exceed the mill levy by 12%, and that is gone. It's a 3% hard cap, just like it is applied to every other political subdivision.
You may.
So that's applied to the 60 mills that's required right now also. So that 60, if valuations go up, that 60 mills could actually go down to 57, 55. If they're generating 3%, but your valuations go up by 10%, that 60 mil may decrease.
Mr. Chairman, I think that would be the effect. If your valuation, Mr. Chairman, is higher than the 3% cap, your taxable value increase, it will force mills down.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Nathy?
Mr. Chairman, so along those lines, I just want to make sure we're clear. So this bill is just 3% of taxes levied. So it has nothing to do with the valuations or mills, or it's just taxes levied, 3%.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nathan's right. You can take 3% more money than you took the previous year in.
No matter
That's
what
it.
levies.
No
or
matter what
valuations
happens
do or anything
throughout
else.
the formula or anywhere else.
Representative Pyle?
Okay, so what happens when I have a high growth school district and I'm getting 400 more kids? And I only can increase my budget 3%. What do I do?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm assuming if you're going to be in a situation where you have 400 new additional students, you're going to have a whole lot of property growth associated with where those students are coming from. I'm assuming they're coming from new homes, unless there's pretty aggressive something else going on in the existing homes. But
Well, Mr. Chairman, we have a lot of apartment buildings too. So it's not necessarily always new homes, but we have a lot of vacancies in apartment buildings too. So
Mr. Chairman, apartments are new growth as well, maybe not as much as a individual home, but new growth is added to the equation.
Representative Lauser?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Pyle's question, that comes in the per pupil payment. So which reflects your local property tax deduction. But we have to be really clear on the 3% cap on schools, and we're leaving the 60 mil mandate in the bill. There's going to have to be money made up somewhere if the valuations go up by more than 3%. Has to happen. We've been doing it for 12 years. We just got out of it. So we have to address that somehow.
Representative Nathy, do you have anything? Okay. Representative Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As somebody that levied property taxes for over a decade, in our jurisdiction, you had 3,500 to 4,000 new people moving in. And so over the duration that I was in office, our valuation, about half of valuation was new properties coming online in a year. So there's the effect to existing properties, my understanding. So all of the new is not capped until that second year. So if you're grabbing that new valuation, so in growing areas, and as the valuation goes up, the compression on the budget's at 3%, you're just gonna end up lowering, your levy rates because you'll be collecting less. But, as valuation, what you're taxing it against is it has greater value. But what I saw in a decade of probably one, if not the fastest growing area in the state, half of our valuation increases per year were new properties coming online.
Mr. Chairman, could I address the,
Yes, you sure
you know,
may, Mr. Chairman.
this bill is going to create some problems in the future. I think we understand that, but it's hard for a committee to envision everything that might come up. So, to Representative Lauser's question on, 60 mil mandate, I don't know that it's clear that we can see that, there are going to be problems associated with that until we come back in 2 years, and we're going to have to address those things when they come up then. But we can't foresee all the problems that may come along with this. So I think, we just have to move forward if this is the way that the legislature wants to move forward, and we'll address those problems during the interim while we're looking at it, so that we'll be prepared, hopefully, to bring solutions to the problems that arise during the next interim. That's about the best we could figure out on how to handle it.
Representative Nathan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Headland's right, and I don't say that very often. But he's absolutely right. We went through the same thing with the K-12 formula back in 2013, and people were talking about the sky is going to fall in K-12 and it's not going to last. And here we are today, 12 years later, and we still have the formula. But Chairman Headland's right. We'll look at this after 2 years, and it's not perfect, just like the K-12 formula wasn't perfect. And we've been tweaking that here and there ever since. Something this big and this impactful is going to take some work as we go along. So this isn't all written in stone. We'll find out what works, and we'll find out where we need to improve it next session. So again, Chairman Headland's right. We'll just keep working on this as we go along, as we have with the K-12 budget. And also, I would remember too, I know there's some concerns about some of the subs with funding and shortfalls and stuff. This is what happened in 2013 too. We all talked about that, but didn't talk about their ending fund balances. Schools are sitting on mountains of money. Cities are sitting on mountains of money. Bismarck, for example, has a 40% ending fund balance right now. 2 years ago, it was 60% by policy. And some of us talked to the mayor, and it's down to 40. So there's a lot of money on the sidelines here. So when they come to us and say, oh, we don't have enough money, this cap's going to crush us, just take a look at their ending fund balance. They have money to tie them over to next session to see what we can do. So again, I've been through this before. I heard the sky is falling before from the subs. I agree with Chairman Headland. Let's just work on this going forward, and we can tweak it. Nobody wants to hurt the subs, but we need to work on something for the taxpayers, because people that are most excited about these type of bills are the people outside the walls, and that's the taxpayers.
And Mr. Chairman, that is the area that we know is going to work, and that people are going to appreciate and enjoy, is everybody is going to have an opportunity of up to $1,450 of their property tax paid.
And with this bill, it will be increasing over time.
Mr. Chairman, that it doesn't say that in the bill any longer. Those provisions were taken out.
Oh,
It's
okay.
going to be up to the next legislative
Okay.
assembly to decide after they've dealt with some of the problems, to see how much there is in earnings, if there's any extra earnings generated, and they will make the decision on any increase.
And that was the premise going forward. I
Yeah.
realize that. Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Hedlund, you can't use the word everybody because there's two classes of individuals that aren't included in this bill. And that's agricultural and commercial. So one class out of three is included in this, and only one class out of three.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nelson's right. When I said everybody, the proper way to say it would have been everybody who owns a primary residence.
Further questions? Okay, thank you, Chairman Hedlund. We're going to call Majority Leader LaFour forward. He's got an amendment he would like to offer.
Thank you, Chairman Vigus, members of the House Appropriations Committee. My name is Mike LaFour, and I serve District 37 Dickinson in the House. And I, first of all, want to start out by thanking the Finance and Tax Committee, who's done one heck of a job trying to go through and find the best solution or solutions to a very complex issue. And there's just so many entities and so many rules that come into play here. So a tip of the hat to the Finance and Tax Committee, who has really worked hard on this. And I'm very grateful for that. You know, and one of the reasons that I originally, decided to co-sponsor House Bill 1176, as I've said before, is because of sustainability. And we have other versions out there. And if you increase by 3%, 3%, 3%, that puts other entities in control. The state of North Dakota doesn't control that continued growth in the cost of the property tax relief. One of the things that OMB put forward for us was that if we have $60 barrel oil, 1.1 million barrels a day, and 6.5% rate of return, by 2037, we'll have $30.5 billion in the legacy fund. And as was stated before, you would have the opportunity to possibly grow the property tax credit in time. This session without the 225 that has now been put in, and I agree with that from the legacy earnings, there's 173 million in addition to that. Next session, if these assumptions remain true, it would grow by $150 million. The next biennium would grow by another $190 million. And by having the property tax credit amount, that puts the legislature in control of what that property tax relief is. And just as an example, in 21 and 22, the ending fund balance legacy fund actually went down from 8.1 billion to 7.9 billion. Obviously, subsequently, it's gone up quite a bit. But I think it's important for we give future legislative assemblies the ability to have control over that mechanism, so that if times get tough and you don't get the revenue that you expect, that you have the flexibility of changing those figures. In another example I give for those of you who've been in this legislature since we added social services to what we pay for, that's gone from, I think, about 176 million to about 230 million. So those costs continue to grow without, some of that's beyond our control. So I'm bringing forth this amendment based on some of the conversation that I heard when Representative Koppelman brought the division to the floor. And there's just a few changes. And first of all, on page 9, line 7, it puts into language may not reduce the property tax due on voter-approved levies. And that is in response, basically, Representative Wagner brought that forward and state that, if you approve a levy, the state of North Dakota is not going to provide property tax relief toward that, because that's a decision that you made locally. Further on page 16, lines 14 through 16, it further defines a primary residence category with suggested wording. My understanding is from the state tax department to make it more clearly defined, and that is the words parcel of to the primary residential property. The other change is on page 34, and that the voters in political subdivision may override the cap, but they must do so in a general election, and they can do so for 4 taxable years. And again, that's the information, that's the feedback that I've received from several legislators. So it removes the 10-year exclusion, and that's basically my amendment. And again, it requires a 50% +1 in a general election, and general election only to override that cap. With that, that completes my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative LaFour. Yeah, I just want to clarify that. So the special election is removed and the primary election is removed as well, that it would be a general election vote with a simple majority.
Chair Vigasaw, Representative Wagner, that is the intent of the amendment, correct?
And so then the soonest that would be able to take place would be during if this were to pass the 2026 election cycle coming up next year. So theoretically, political subs would have to live under a cap for 1 year, and then the voters would have the ability for the next budgetary cycle at the local level to override that.
Chair
by a public
Vigasaw,
vote.
Representative Wagner, you are correct.
Thank you.
Further questions for the leader on the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Committee, discussion on the amendment?
Well, I'll move it.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the amendment from Representative Kempenick,
Second.
second from Representative Wagner. Adam, do you have the amendment? You do have the amendment. Okay, so we don't need to explain it. It's all drawn up and you have it. Did everybody have a copy of that? It's in the book. It'd be 03002 is the amendment. No further discussion? Okay,
Lauser.
yes, Representative Lauser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume that we're talking about school districts, and I don't know if I was clear when I addressed the question before on additional levy authority. There is language in Century Code for school districts to have a 50% majority vote on additional levy authority, depending on the size of the community, and I think it's 4,000. And then it's 55% if it's a larger community. So would we be striking that language for levy authority on school districts by applying this to all political subs? And if so, we would have to address that in another part of code.
We'll lean on Adam on that one.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, we can take a look at that and see if there would be a potential conflict in that
Okay.
portion of the law.
We could further amend too if we needed to address it before we take final action. Okay, seeing no other discussion, we'll take the roll on the amendment 25.1003.03002.
Chairman Vigasaw,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Kempenik,
Yes.
Representatives Anderson,
Yes.
Berg, Bosch,
Yes.
Brandenburg, Fisher,
Yes.
Hanson,
No.
Lauser,
Yes.
Martinson, Meyer,
Yes.
Mitzcog,
Yes.
Monson,
Yeah.
Murphy,
Yes.
Nathy,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
O'Brien,
Yes.
Pyle,
Yes.
Richter,
Yes.
Sanford,
Yes.
Steeman,
Yes.
Swantek, Wagner.
Yes.
Okay, the motion to approve the amendment was 21 with 2 absent. Okay, the amendment is on the bill. Did anybody have any other amendments prepared for discussion today? Seeing none. Okay, committee, we have that bill amended. with 3002, and we will then move on to the discussion of the next property tax bill, which is 1575. And we are merely going to have that introduced today. The bill sponsor would requested that we hold off on discussion of the amendment until he could be here. And that's fine, but we'll have the chairman bring it before us. So Chairman Headland, House Bill 1575.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Representative Craig Headland, District 29. 1575 was amended in committee because the intent of the bill was to provide relief across a couple of additional classes of property that was held in ownership by people that lived here. And Mr. Chairman, we tried to figure if there was a way that we could actually do that and that it would meet the constitutional requirements, and we just couldn't get there in a place of certainty. There were discussions with the bill sponsor, and it was decided to just allow the changes to apply across all the property against all classes. So, well, I shouldn't say all classes because it's a bill that is going to change the percentage in the formula, how the calculation is made on residential, commercial, and ag properties. In the bill, the residential is going to go from a 9% calculation to 6.25, so a 2.75% reduction, which equates to about a 30% overall reduction. And commercial and ag are both going to be reduced from 10% down to 8.5, which is about a 15% reduction across those properties. When we made that decision, we had not yet seen a fiscal note that I see is now available. So those changes increased to what the initial fiscal note was going to be, and we knew it would, but we didn't know how much. So it's going to be your decision to decide if you want to make changes into the cost of this. You could just easily do it by adjusting those percentages in the formula, which I guess is at your discretion. Has everybody seen the fiscal note? It appears like it's going to cost about $703 million.
Yeah, the fiscal note is 0.02000, 703 million. And Chairman Headland, is there still questions as to how this could be applied going forward, or is it pretty straightforward that you know how each property will be affected?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward how the bill is written in the percentage changes. And if they are adjusted, it's pretty straightforward on what those changes would be going forward. However, the cap works a little bit different to the levy limitation in this bill, where it's just a 3% cap on the taxable valuation and not the dollars.
Questions by the committee? Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Headland, I'm curious that, when we talk about this bill and the cost of it, it does include all out-of-state ownership. There are other states that are able to distinguish between in and out-of-state ownership in their tax policies. And obviously, they've been doing that for a while, so that it must meet the constitutional muster. Why can't we do that in this case?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nelson, we probably could have um, we couldn't come up with language that seemed to fit exactly on what we were trying to accomplish here. And I think in discussions with others, it created some uncertainty about what could possibly come in the form of litigation. I think the original bill referred to commercial property as a business domiciled here, and I think it would be fairly easy to. Well, it would not be easy to determine. We don't really know. We don't have knowledge as to, how ownership across the commercial property is and whether a company is domiciled here or not. So it was kind of difficult for us to even make a decision on how to move forward with this. It became a lot clearer when the bill sponsor decided to let's just try to get something that will work for all the three classes of property we're talking about, and let's move forward.
Well, there were, if I could, Mr. Chairman,
Continue.
in the discussions that were taking place with Measure 4, one of the things that was brought out, if we would have passed Measure 4, that it was supposedly going to help young farmers and ranchers in North Dakota. I did not see where Measure 4 would do that, because how the state interest would have had the same benefit. No property taxes is in state. And that investment from our state, I think, would utilize that. But that's my opinion. But that discussion, I think, is worthy of carrying this through, because if we want to promote younger farmers and ranchers having the ability to purchase and operate land in the state, if we could develop a policy that puts them at an advantageous position from a property tax standpoint, that's about all we can do, I would say, from a state perspective. And I think we should explore doing that to the greatest extent. I don't often say this, but I heard that Representative Doctor had a great plan, and that would have potentially met constitutional muster. And I wish we would explore that more. I think that's got as much potential out in the rural parts of our state as the property tax itself. That provision. That's my feeling.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nelson, Representative Doctor may have had a great plan, but he couldn't explain to us how to implement it.
That's a problem.
Nor
Any
could the
further
bill
question-
sponsor, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Any further questions for Chairman Hedlund? Well, thank you very much, Chairman Hedlund. Appreciate you being here and doing your best to explain the three proposals. So committee, we need to reach out to Representative Ruby. We have a transportation bill up next. So we'll just stand at ease here for just a bit, be on recess, try to reach him. Committee, my mistake on referring to Representative Ruby having to come down. That was originally in transportation, but then re-referred to finance and tax. So we will retain Chairman Headland, and he will explain House Bill 1382.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Again, for the record, Representative Craig Headland, District 29. 1382 is a fairly simple bill that would add 3 cents to the motor vehicle excise, or the motor fuels tax, not the motor vehicle excise tax. And it would be distributed evenly, 1 cent to the counties, 1 cent to the cities, and 1 cent to the townships. And then there's a funding mechanism in place that I think the dollars would follow. The 1 cent would be distributed to the counties. And Representative Haggard here, if he's more clear on remembering exactly how the formulas work, but I know the committee did change the distribution on how it would flow to townships. I think at first they were going to use the Upper Great Plains Transportation Study, but I think later it was determined there was already a formula for distribution based on township miles in place, so that it seemed to be appropriate to make that change. And then the monies would be distributed out from the treasurer. And I think, if I recall, it generates about 40 million. Okay, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chairman and committee, it's about 42 million a biennium and 17 million to counties, 17.8, 10.1 to the cities, and then a third of that money would be distributed to the township based on that formula that we spoke to earlier.
Representative Murphy.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Headland, was there a reason that they didn't go with the highway distribution formula? Was there any reason for this 3 cents all to go to the counties, townships, and cities? And is any going to public transportation?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Murphy, well, I think the intent of the bill was to find a way to help the political subs here generate some dollars for roads, and yeah, the decision was made on how the bill was drafted. The intent was to keep it out of the highway distribution fund and have it be distributed just for those political subdivisions, because the feeling I think was that the state has plenty of revenues to meet the needs of what they need on their roads, but the political subs don't.
Questions by the committee? Pretty straightforward bill, unlike the last few that we talked about.
Thank you.
Well, let's discuss this one, committee. What are your feelings? Two things, I guess, primarily. It raises the fuel tax by 3 cents a gallon and distributes the funny money to, did I actually say it? The funds would go to counties, cities, and townships.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Pyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As one who has done this, for the small towns when they have to do small street repairs, this is key. They don't levy enough money in their roads and bridges and property tax to really cover the costs. Or if there's a bad snowstorm, or we get those bad years of snow, a lot of that comes out of their streets. funds, and it's all fund accounting, so you can't pull from the water fund to pay for for their street repairs. And so I appreciate that this is actually going to the political subs and that we're not taking this fund, because this is what I see as property tax relief. I know it's coming from our pocket dollars, and I don't like that part, but as far as building and paying for good streets in the rural areas, this is very key.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Chairman and Vice Chairman, approximately 40% of our fuel taxes comes from out-of-state individuals and companies. Further discussion by the committee? Representative Wagner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know this is greatly appreciated. Part of the issue too with North Dakota, a lot of the smaller jurisdictions, counties, their problem is they can't build to the federal aid level. And so any state dollars, even a 2-lane divided paved highway, and a lot of them aren't. You got a lot of gravel roads but $1.5 million per mile. So it is expensive. A lot of the smaller jurisdictions, they'll bank their, highway distribution dollars for a number of years just to go to do one project. So any investment in the infrastructure, which is really at the end of the day, protecting the safety and well-being of the citizens of North Dakota as they travel on, the highway systems and travel over the bridges of our state. So I know it's greatly appreciated.
Representative Richter, did you have a question? Representative Murphy?
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment with regards to this one from my extensive one-session experience on transportation. I will say it's sorely needed, and I'm not against all 3 cents going to the counties. I just want to know why that was chosen, if there was any rationale over. We need to flow more money to townships. If you look at the highway tax fund, it's like 39% roughly goes to counties, cities, townships, with 1.5% to public transportation. And so this would get more money in the hands of townships to really, there is a big need out there. And so, I'm highly in favor of this bill, which is of course why I voted to raise fuel taxes. We'll hear about that when it passes.
Mr. Chairman. Representative Wagner first.
Yeah, just kind of answer that. Municipalities have more ways of generating revenue and being able to provide for infrastructure. Your townships and your counties, they've got property taxes unless it's intergovernmental aid. So,
Representative Brandenburg?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I like it. Are you ready for a motion?
Well, I don't dictate when motions come from committee members.
Well,
I might
for a due pass.
I was going to say, I might ask for a motion at times. Okay, so we have a motion by Representative Brandenburg, second by Representative Murphy, for a due pass on House Bill 1382. Any discussion? Representative Richter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was kind of hoping to have a tad bit more time to take a look at this as it says distribution to non-oil producing counties. I know there's conversations going on right now in the other funds, road funds coming out of oil production into non-oil producing counties. And I'm just not to a point of knowledge where I can say, yep, I can feel like I can make a vote on this.
Well, we have a motion in front of us and a second, so we are at that point where we're going to have a vote.
Mr. Chairman, I could explain that oil formula pretty good.
Well, that's for another day,
Okay.
because I know those discussions are continuing on other bills. Seeing none, we'll have Sierra take the roll, and Sierra is going to start at the bottom.
Representatives Wagner,
This one I feel better about voting on the last time you did this to me, yeah.
Swantek. Steeman.
Yes.
Sanford. Richter.
No.
Pyle.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Nathy.
No.
Murphy.
Yes.
Monson.
Yes.
Mitzcog.
Yes.
Meyer.
Yes.
Martinson. Lauser.
No.
Hanson.
No.
Fisher.
Yes.
Brandenburg.
Yes.
Bosch. Berg. Anderson.
No.
Vice Chairman Kapanik.
No.
Chairman Vigasaw.
Yes. Okay. 13 yay, 7 no, and 3 absent. So that will go back to the original carrier. And who was the carrier? D. Anderson.
Some good hands.
Okay, committee.
Smart money's going on. Yeah. Jeez. Smart.
Representative Fisher, are you, can you do tax in 10 minutes? Okay, 2006 committee. Excuse me, we're not in the Senate, are we? 1006.
Now, it's, like I said, if, well, they might wind up. I'm guessing, well, no, the problem is the counties and townships are taking over that tax too. Over the Senate. See, that's what bugging me.
Tax department budget yet until you feel property tax, because some of this conflicts with the property tax bills.
If the bills pass, so
That would be the only-
So.
We'll just be at ease here for a second.
Next go around, but I've talked to Hinky and stuff, and they're taking 100%, because half their taxes. And then you got county townships are trying to get their other half over on the Senate. Yeah, you start whittling, that's, see, we're passing a bunch of crap for local subdivisions, but this state's gonna have a hard time going through that. It's money going to government, it's just money that we don't control it here anymore and how it gets spent. And so that's getting to be a real problem. Cause you take. Well, that's the whole thing, is you're gonna see more because.
Committee, Adam just told me that we should maybe hold off on 1006 just because of all the other property tax bills that are in the mix. Like the disabled veterans and homestead tax credit and all these types of things that are still being decided. So sorry about that, Representative Fisher, but we will probably just have to wait on that. So we're going in at 4:30, so we will break now, but when we come back, then we're gonna work on, we'll do the treasures. Representative Kempenik, you ready on 1005?
Yeah.
And we'll do the governor's office. Representative Swantek will be back. That's 1001. And then we'll discuss some of the bills that we had this morning. And if at all possible, move those out. That's my goal, is to try to finish up what we hear in the mornings by the end of the day if we possibly can. So we will be in recess until after the floor session, and I think we're scheduled to go to 6:30, but we'll see how that goes. But we'll come in and probably be here till about 8 or fewer, depending on how many we get done. So We'll be in recess till after the fourth session.